My name is Richard Hayes, and I've always been a man who believed in dignity, discipline, and respect. I built my life from scratch, brick by brick, sweat by sweat. At 56, I have what I once only dreamed of: a sprawling villa by the coast, a reputation as a successful businessman, and a family that, at least in my eyes, was supposed to be united. But life has a cruel way of showing you who truly stands beside you, and who only sees your shadow as a place to hide. I remember when my daughter Anna came home one evening, cheeks glowing, eyes shining, and told me she had met the man she wanted to marry. His name was Daniel. At that time, I didn't know much about him, other than the fact that he was tall, charming, and had that kind of smile that could sell a lie as if it were gospel truth. My wife, Margaret, was enchanted by him almost instantly. And Anna? Well, you know how young women are when love clouds their vision. She believed Daniel was her knight in shining armor. But me? I've always trusted my gut, and something about Daniel never sat right with me. It wasn't just the way he avoided eye contact whenever I asked him about his work, or how he kept changing the subject when money came into the conversation. It was deeper than that. He carried himself like a man who thought the world owed him something, like he could take shortcuts through life and ride on other people's achievements. Still, I kept my mouth shut, for Anna's sake. She deserved to be happy, and if Daniel was truly the man she loved, then who was I to stand in her way? But I'll tell you this: when you allow a fox into your home, don't be surprised when you find the henhouse in ruins. The first real crack showed not long after the wedding. Daniel started dropping by my villa unannounced, treating it less like his father-in-law's house and more like his personal weekend getaway. At first, I tolerated it. I told myself, he's young, maybe he just feels comfortable here. But then he started bringing his friends along. Strangers. Loud, brash men who drank my liquor, splashed around in my pool, and left cigarette butts smoldering in my garden, as if they owned the place. I tried talking to Anna about it, but she brushed it off. Daniel just likes to hang out with his friends. Don't take it so seriously, she'd say, laughing, as though I were some old-fashioned relic who didn't understand modern friendships. But I understood perfectly well. I understood that Daniel wasn't just disrespecting me. He was testing how far he could push. One evening, I came back from a business trip earlier than expected. My villa, my sanctuary, my hard-earned paradise, it was blasting with music so loud it rattled the windows. As I stepped inside, the stench of alcohol and smoke hit me like a wall. There, sprawled across my leather sofas, were Daniel and half a dozen of his so-called friends. Shoes kicked off, bottles littered across the floor, laughter echoing through my halls as if they were in some cheap bar. And then I saw it. One of them, a scruffy-looking man with greasy hair, had his feet up on my antique coffee table, the same one I'd bought during my travels in Italy. A piece of history, disrespected by men who didn't even know its worth. "Daniel," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. The room fell silent. Slowly Daniel turned, that smug grin plastered on his face. "Hey, Richard," he said casually, as if nothing was wrong. "Didn't know you were back so soon." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Everyone out." There was a moment of hesitation, then laughter. One of Daniel's friends muttered, "Relax, old man. We're just having fun." Old man. That's what they called me, in my own house. But Daniel, he didn't move. He just leaned back, arms spread across the sofa, looking at me with those arrogant eyes that seemed to say, "What are you going to do about it?" That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about parties or noise, or a bit of mess. This was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. Daniel thought he could barge into my villa, desecrate my home, and laugh in my face while doing it. He thought my silence was weakness. He thought I was too old, too soft, too sentimental to put him in his place. He was wrong. I remember Margaret's voice in my head, always telling me not to lose my temper, not to act rashly. But that night, something inside me shifted. I realized that if I didn't take a stand, I would lose everything. Not just my peace, but the respect of my family, the very essence of who I was. So I made a decision that would shake Daniel to his core and teach him, once and for all, that in this house, in my house, there are rules. And those who break them pay dearly. And trust me when I say, he had no idea what was coming. That night, after Daniel and his friends finally dragged themselves out of my villa, grumbling, muttering, one of them even tossing a bottle into my garden, like it was a garbage dump. I stood in the middle of my living room and just looked around. My carpets were stained with spilled liquor, the sharp smell of cigarettes clung to the curtains, and my priceless coffee table had a fresh scratch gouged across its surface. I should have been furious, and I was, but beneath the anger was something deeper. It was humiliation. My own son-in-law had turned my villa into a playground for his reckless antics. And he hadn't even flinched when I walked in. He wanted me to see it. He wanted to show me that he didn't fear me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch, sipping black coffee until the sun rose, and I began to plan. Not a quick emotional outburst. No, that's not my way. I was going to take my time. I was going to teach Daniel a lesson he would never forget. One that would make him think twice before ever crossing me again. The first step was patience. I knew I couldn't confront Anna about it yet. She was too blinded by her love for Daniel. If I came at her with accusations, she'd only defend him. No, I had to wait for the right moment, the moment Daniel would push things too far, the moment when even Anna couldn't deny what he truly was. And as if the universe was listening, that moment came sooner than I expected. It was a Friday evening, 2 weeks later. Margaret and I had been invited to a charity gala, but she fell ill with a migraine, so I decided to stay home with her. Anna called me around 9 p.m., saying Daniel was out with some friends, but she didn't know where. I didn't think much of it, until I heard it again. That same blasting music, that same arrogant laughter, drifting up the hill toward my villa. I stormed out of the house and there they were, Daniel and his pack of hyenas, parking their cars right at the gates. Engines revving, headlights sweeping across my garden like searchlights. Daniel strolled up with a bottle in his hand, shouting, "Party at the villa." This time, something inside me snapped. I opened the gate myself, standing in the entrance, blocking their way. I said firmly. Daniel smirked, his friends jeering behind him. "Come on, Richard. Don't be such a buzzkill. We're just here to have a little fun." I stepped forward, inches from his face. "This is my home, and you don't set foot inside it tonight. Or ever again, unless you're invited." His eyes hardened, and for the first time, I saw the real Daniel, the entitled brat beneath the charming mask. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Careful, old man. You might just regret trying to embarrass me in front of my friends." Regret. He had no idea who he was talking to. I didn't flinch. "Go home, Daniel." For a tense moment, neither of us moved. Then one of his friends called out, "Forget it, Dan. Let's just go somewhere else." With a forced laugh, Daniel stepped back. "Have it your way." "But, Don't think this is over. They left that night, but his words clung to me like a thorn. Margaret, worried as always, told me to let it go. Richard, he's young. He'll grow out of it. Don't turn this into a war. But she didn't understand. This wasn't just youthful recklessness. This was Daniel challenging me, testing me, daring me. And I wasn't about to let my son-in-law, my guest in this family, dictate how I should live in my own home. So I began to prepare, quietly, methodically. I had cameras installed around the villa, hidden ones, catching every corner of the property. I changed the locks on the gates, set up alarms only I could control. I even spoke to a few trusted friends in the police, making sure that if anything went wrong, I'd have the law on my side. But most importantly, I devised a plan. A plan not just to stop Daniel, but to expose him, to Anna, to Margaret, to everyone, to show the world the kind of man he truly was. And the opportunity, it came faster than even I expected. The very next weekend, while Anna thought Daniel was on a business trip, he showed up again. This time with even more friends, cars packed with crates of beer and boxes of food, ready to throw what looked like a festival in my villa. He hadn't even bothered to check if I was home. That arrogance, that blind belief that he could walk into my sanctuary whenever he pleased, was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I sat in the shadows of my study, watching the cameras, watching as they piled into my living room, laughing, shouting, blasting music, throwing their shoes around like animals. Daniel led the charge, standing in the center of the room like some self-proclaimed king. And me, I just smiled, because this time I was ready. This time, Daniel had walked straight into my trap. From the moment Daniel stepped into my villa that night, swaggering like a spoiled prince, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was like watching a storm you already knew was coming. You don't panic. You don't run. You just brace yourself and let the thunder roll. I sat in the study, the glow of the security monitors flickering in front of me, and watched them spread across the house like termites. They opened my liquor cabinet, ripped into food from my kitchen, tossed my cushions on the floor, and blasted music so loud the glass chandeliers quivered. They didn't know, no, they couldn't even imagine, that every second of their little invasion was being recorded. Daniel's voice boomed through the speakers as he raised his bottle. To freedom! To living the way we want! His friends cheered. One of them even had the audacity to jump into my indoor fountain, splashing water across the marble floor I had imported from Spain. Another sprawled across Margaret's favorite armchair, greasy chips spilling into the fabric. And still, I waited. When you want to teach a man a lesson, timing is everything. Too soon, and you seem petty. Too late, and you seem weak. But just at the right moment, you carve it into their memory forever. I let them have their fun for a while. I wanted Daniel to feel comfortable, to believe he had won, that he owned my villa, my dignity, my silence. And then, when the music was at its peak and the laughter was loudest, I struck. I cut the power. With a single press of the button, the entire villa plunged into darkness. The music died, the lights vanished, and silence fell like a hammer. What the? I heard the scrape of bottles tipping over, the shuffle of confused feet. Daniel's voice rose, sharp and irritated. Relax, probably just a fuse. Someone get a flashlight. That's when the second part of my plan kicked in. Through the speakers, I played back the recordings I had prepared. Low, menacing sounds of footsteps echoing through the halls, doors creaking, whispers calling their names. Who's there? One of the men shouted nervously. Another cursed under his breath. Man, This place is haunted. I almost laughed, but I stayed silent. I wanted them to feel the fear grow, to let their imagination do half the work for me. Daniel tried to hold control, but I could hear the unease in his voice. Shut up, all of you. It's just Richard playing games. He was right, but his bravado cracked when the main door slammed shut. Another button pressed from the control panel in my study. The heavy echo reverberated through the villa like a coffin lid closing. Daniel. I finally spoke, my voice amplified through every hidden speaker in the house. Deep, steady, unshackable. You've made a grave mistake. The room went dead silent. I continued, my voice carrying through every corridor, every darkened room. You walk into my home like a king, but you forget whose kingdom this is. You think my silence is weakness, my patience is surrender. Tonight, you will learn otherwise. Someone cursed. Another man shouted, "This is insane. Let's get out of here!" But the doors were locked. Every exit secured. They were trapped. Daniel barked, "Richard, stop this nonsense right now." "Oh, Daniel," I said, calm as ice. "This isn't nonsense. This is justice." I turned on the monitors, one by one, showing their terrified faces on the big screen in front of me. Cameras caught every angle. The fear in their eyes, the tremble in their hands. The realization that they weren't in control anymore. Then I played back footage from previous weeks. Their drunken parties, their reckless behavior, Daniel himself smashing bottles, laughing as he spilled liquor across my antique carpets. Every moment displayed like evidence in a courtroom. His friends stared at the screens, horrified. "Damn, he's been recording us." One gasped. Daniel's face paled, but he tried to hold steady. "So what? This proves nothing?" "Oh, but it does," I replied smoothly. "It proves who you are. A parasite. A coward who hides behind his friends. A liar who cheats my daughter. A fool who thought he could mock me in my own home. Anna. My poor Anna. She still didn't know the kind of man she had married. But she would. Soon. The men began to panic. One of them started banging on the locked door, shouting to be let out. Another dropped his drink, the glass shattering across the floor. Daniel roared, "Enogetch! Open the doors!" Richard. And that was the moment. The perfect, golden moment I had been waiting for. I stepped out of the study, walking slowly into the living room. The emergency lights I had triggered bathed the room in a dim red glow, casting shadows that danced across the walls. I stood tall, my presence commanding the room. Silence swallowed their laughter, their bravado, their arrogance. "You wanted to play king in my castle, Daniel," I said, my eyes locking with his. "But tonight, the king returns." The weight of my words hung heavy in the air, and in Daniel's eyes, for the first time, I saw it. Fear. The look on Daniel's face that night was worth every sleepless hour I had spent planning. That smug confidence he always carried. It cracked. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered with unease, and for a brief moment, he looked less like the fearless son-in-law he pretended to be, and more like a boy caught with his hand in the fire. His friends didn't bother hiding their fear. One of them whispered, "Man, let's just get out of here," while another clutched the doorknob, shaking it like a trapped animal. The red emergency light pulsed across their faces, making them look like guilty convicts awaiting judgment. I stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until I was standing face to face with Daniel. "You've crossed every line there is to cross. You disrespected my home. You disrespected me. But worst of all, you disrespected Anna." His eyes widened at her name. But I pressed on. "She thinks you're out working hard, building a future for her, when all you're building is chaos. Do you know what it does to me, Daniel, to watch my daughter defend you, not realizing the truth? Tonight, she'll see who you really are. Don't bring Anna into this. He snapped, but his voice cracked, betraying the fear beneath. Oh, I already have, I replied, gesturing to the camera in the corner. She'll be watching this footage. Every lie, every drunken laugh, every disrespectful word. You thought you could hide behind charm, but you can't hide from the truth. One of his friends lost it, yelling, "You're insane, old man! Let us out!" He lunged toward me, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I raised a small remote in my hand and pressed another button. Suddenly, loud alarms blared through the villa, piercing sirens that shook the walls. The men clamped their hands over their ears, shouting in panic. Red lights flashed like police sirens. Smoke machines, hidden in the corners of the room, released clouds that made the air thick and choking. "God, what the hell is happening?" Someone screamed. "This place is cursed," another shouted. I stood calm amidst the chaos, my eyes never leaving Daniel. "You wanted to play games in my house. Fine, but understand this. I don't lose games. I control them." Daniel's fists clenched, his knuckles turning white. He tried to bark orders at his friends, telling them to calm down, but they wouldn't listen. The fear was too much. One of them even dropped to his knees, muttering prayers under his breath. I turned the alarms off, letting silence fall once more, heavy and suffocating. "Do you see now, Daniel? You are nothing without the comfort of other people's homes, other people's money, other people's respect. Strip all that away, and what's left of you? Nothing but a coward in the dark." For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. He just stared at me, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his temple. I leaned in close, my voice low but sharp. "You thought I was weak because I stayed silent. But silence isn't weakness. It's patience. And patience, Daniel, is the weapon of men who know how to win." One of his friends finally broke, shouting, "Please, just let us go, man! We won't come back, I swear!" I smiled coldly. "Oh, you'll leave. But not before you clean up every last mess you made in this house." Their eyes widened. "You heard me," I said firmly. "Every bottle, every cigarette butt, every cushion you threw, you'll scrub, mop, and sweep this villa until it shines like it did before you ever set foot in it. And if you don't..." I pointed toward the monitors, showing all the incriminating footage. "This goes straight to the police. Vandalism, trespassing, destruction of property. Your choice." Daniel's friends exchanged panicked looks. They knew I wasn't bluffing. Slowly, reluctantly, they began picking up bottles, gathering trash, wiping down surfaces. Daniel stood still, glaring at me with that same burning hatred. "You'll regret this," he muttered. I stepped closer, so close I could see the twitch in his jaw. "No, Daniel. You'll regret it. Every time you look at me, every time you step into my daughter's presence, you'll remember this night. You'll remember that you tried to take my respect and failed." He wanted to fight back, I could see it. But with his friends humiliated, bent over sweeping my floors like hired help, his pride was already shattered. He said nothing more. Hours passed as they worked, their drunken energy drained into exhausted silence. By the time they finished, the villa was spotless. Better than I could have done myself. I stood there, watching, making sure they didn't skip a corner, making sure the lesson sank deep. Finally, when dawn's light began seeping through the windows, I unlocked the front door. "Get out," I commanded. They didn't hesitate. They filed out one by one, eyes downcast, muttering curses under their breath. Daniel was the last to leave. He paused at the door, turning back to look at me. His eyes no longer held arrogance. They held fury, the kind of fury that festers when pride has been stripped bare. "This isn't over," he said quietly. I stared back, unblinking. "Oh, it is. For you." He left without another word, and the door slammed shut behind him. I stood there for a long time. The silence of the villa pressing around me, the weight of what had happened settling in. I knew Daniel wasn't finished. Men like him never are. He would come back, not with laughter this time, but with vengeance of his own. And I would be ready. For a few days after that night, the villa was quiet. Too quiet. Margaret noticed it first. She said she hadn't heard Daniel's car roar down the hill or seen his friends loitering outside. Anna told me he was working late, that he was stressed from business. Business. The word made me laugh bitterly. Daniel wouldn't know real work if it hit him in the face. But silence, I've learned, is never peace. It's the calm before another storm. And sure enough, Daniel made his move. It was a Thursday evening when I found my garden gate unlocked. I always kept it bolted, always checked twice before bed, but that night, it was wide open. The next morning, I discovered muddy footprints leading up to the poolside. Cigarette butts scattered near the lounge chairs, and one of my outdoor cameras twisted toward the sky. Someone had been here. Someone had wanted me to know it. Daniel wasn't done. He wanted payback. I could have confronted him right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I let him believe he had the upper hand. Let him think he could rattle me. What he didn't know was that I had already upgraded every inch of my villa's security. Hidden cameras, silent alarms, reinforced locks. If he wanted to play this game, I was more than ready to finish it. 2 nights later, the inevitable happened. It was close to midnight when I heard the sound of engines. Not one, not two. 3 cars rolling up the driveway, their headlights off. Tires crunching against the gravel. I turned off the study light and moved to the monitor screens. There they were. Daniel and his same pack of friends, creeping around like thieves, backpacks slung over their shoulders, flashlights in hand. One of them whispered, "You sure he's not home?" Daniel's voice was sharp, low. "Doesn't matter. We're going in. Tonight we show him he doesn't control me." To control. That was what this was about. It wasn't about the villa, the parties, the friends. It was about power. Daniel couldn't stand that I had stripped him of his illusion of dominance in front of his little followers. And now, he wanted to take it back. I watched as they tried the doors, locked. They tried the windows, secure. They circled the house like wolves, but every path was shut. Then Daniel spotted the side entrance to the garage. They broke in, smashing a small window, crawling through like rats. And just like that, they were inside my villa again. But this time, I wasn't going to just scare them. No, this time I was going to end this charade once and for all. I activated the silent alarm that went straight to the police. Then I sat back and waited. Daniel led his friends into the living room, flashlights darting across the walls, their whispers filling the dark. "Where's the liquor? Where's the safe?" one asked. "Forget that," Daniel snapped. "We're gonna wreck this place. Make him regret ever messing with me." My blood boiled as I watched them kick over furniture, tear down framed paintings, shatter vases. My home, my sanctuary, desecrated again, but I didn't move. Not yet. Then Daniel did something that made my heart stop. He grabbed a photo frame off the mantelpiece. The one of Anna on her wedding day, standing beside Margaret and me. He stared at it for a long moment, then sneered and dropped it to the floor. The glass shattered into pieces. That was it. That was the moment. I stepped out of the shadows and into the room, my voice ringing through the silence. Enough. They froze, every flashlight swinging toward me. I stood tall, unflinching, the broken photo glinting at my feet. Daniel smirked, though I could see the twitch in his jaw. Well, the king finally shows himself. This is my home, I said coldly. And tonight? You've signed your own fate. One of his friends stepped forward aggressively, but before he could say a word, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer, piercing the night. Blue and red lights began flashing outside the windows. Daniel's face drained of color. You called the cops? I smiled faintly. Of course I did. Did you really think I'd let you walk in here again without consequence? Panic rippled through his group. Two of them bolted toward the back door, only to find it locked tight. Another cursed, pacing like a trapped animal. Daniel tried to stay composed, but the sweat on his forehead betrayed him. You wouldn't dare press charges. Not against your own family. Family. I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp. Family doesn't destroy each other's homes. Family doesn't humiliate their wives, lie to their in-laws, or barge into their father-in-law's villa like a criminal. You stopped being family the moment you chose arrogance over respect. The pounding on the front door grew louder. The police were here. His friends were nearly in tears, begging him to do something, to fix it. But Daniel was frozen. I looked him straight in the eye. You wanted a war, Daniel. Here it is, and you've already lost. The door burst open, officers flooding inside, flashlights cutting through the smoke and chaos. Shouts echoed as they ordered everyone to the ground. Daniel's friends dropped immediately, hands raised, faces pale with fear. But Daniel, he stood tall, trying one last time to cling to his pride. This is a mistake! I belong here! This is my family's house. The officer glanced at me. I shook my head slowly. No, this is my house, and he's nothing more than an intruder. And with that, they cuffed him. For the first time, I saw it. The collapse of his facade. No smirk, no charm, no defiance. Just raw, naked defeat in his eyes as they dragged him out of my villa, past the shattered photo frame, past the walls he had disrespected, past the man he thought he could break. I watched them go, my chest heavy, my fists trembling. I had won, but this victory came with a cost, because sooner or later, Anna would have to know the truth, and that truth would shatter her world. The night Daniel was dragged out of my villa in handcuffs, I didn't sleep. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the broken frame of Anna's wedding photo, shards of glass glinting in the soft morning light. My heart ached, not for Daniel, but for her. She was innocent in all of this, blinded by love, and I knew when she heard what happened, her world would crumble. Margaret came down the stairs, her face pale, worry etched in every line. Richard, she whispered, what have you done? What I had to, I said quietly, my voice heavy. He left me no choice. We didn't have to wait long. By noon, Anna was at the villa, her eyes red from crying, her voice trembling as she stormed inside. Dad, what happened? Why did you call the police on Daniel? They said you had him arrested. Her words were like knives, each one twisting deeper. She looked at me not as her father, but as the man who had destroyed her husband. Sit down, Anna, I said softly, though my chest burned with the weight of what I had to tell her. She shook her head violently. No, tell me right now. How could you do this to him? To us. I walked over to the study, turned on the monitors, and pressed play. The footage flickered on the screen. Daniel and his friends barging in, laughing, drinking, tearing through the villa. smashing the photo of her wedding day. Every moment, every cruel laugh, every act of disrespect laid bare in front of her. Anna's hands flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. I didn't speak. I let the truth speak for itself. The recording continued. Daniel shouting, Daniel boasting, Daniel calling me an old man and mocking my authority. And then the final moment. The photo of Anna dropped carelessly, shattering at his feet. When the screen went dark, the silence was deafening. Anna stood frozen, her tears streaming down her face. "Anna," I said gently, "I didn't want you to see this. But I couldn't let him keep lying to you. He's not the man you think he is. He's not here for you. He's here for what he can take. And if I stayed silent, if I let him keep disrespecting this family, then I wouldn't just lose my home, I'd lose you." She staggered back, shaking her head, whispering Daniel's name like a prayer, as if clinging to the hope that this was some nightmare. But there was no denying what she had seen. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she finally cried. "Because I wanted to protect you," I answered, my voice breaking for the first time. "Because I hoped, God, I hoped, that maybe he would change, that maybe he'd realize what he had and grow into the man you deserve. But he didn't, Anna. And last night, he crossed a line he can't come back from." She sank into a chair, sobbing quietly. Margaret rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her. I stood back, feeling the weight of years of fatherhood pressing down on me. The helplessness of watching your child suffer, knowing you can't shield them from pain. Hours passed before Anna finally spoke again. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "What will happen to him?" I sighed. "The police have him on trespassing, vandalism, destruction of property. His friends, too. If I press charges, he could face serious time. If I don't, he'll walk free. But either way, Anna, you have to decide what you want your life to be. Do you want to spend it patching the holes he rips in your heart? Or do you want to find someone who values you, who respects you, who doesn't treat your family like dirt under his feet?" She didn't answer right away, but the look in her eyes told me she knew the truth. Truth she didn't want to face, but couldn't deny anymore. The days that followed were hard, painful. Anna visited Daniel once in custody, and when she came back, she didn't speak a word for hours. Finally, she told us he had begged her to stand by him, promised he'd change, swore it was all a mistake. But she had seen the videos. She had seen the truth. And deep down, she knew promises from Daniel were as fragile as the glass frame he had shattered. Weeks later, Anna filed for separation. Margaret held her through the nights, and I stayed strong for her, though inside I felt the heaviness of every tear she shed. She was my daughter, my little girl, and though I had saved her from a man who would have destroyed her, I couldn't save her from the heartbreak. Daniel never set foot in my villa again. His friends scattered, his reputation crumbled, and he became just another man who mistook arrogance for strength. As for me, I walk the halls of my villa now with peace again. The laughter I hear is Anna's when she visits, lighter now, freer. The silence is no longer heavy, but soothing. My home is mine again, not just the walls and the furniture, but the dignity within them. And sometimes, when I sit on the porch at sunset, I think of Daniel, not with hatred, but with pity. Because men like him never learn until it's too late. And while he lost everything, I kept what mattered most: respect, family, and the unshakable truth that no matter how bold a man thinks he is, he should never mistake a father's silence for weakness. That was the lesson I taught my son in law, and it's one he'll never forget.